It was 3 a.m., and the car wasn't getting any less broken. Today had been fairly successful. We had made it about halfway to our destination when the car broke down. Unfortunately, where we broke down was the middle of nowhere, a completely flat field, and the darkness wasn't helping me figure out much. My friend was moving house. I'd suggested somewhere closer to the city, but he wouldn't have it. It'd been about 2 hours since we called for a tow truck. It wasn't an easy place to get to. I was sitting on the hood of the car, about to give up hope that we'd have any sort of help before dawn, when my friend pointed out a light off in the distance. I was fairly certain there hadn't been a light there for the past 2 hours, but nonetheless, there was a small speck of light off in the distance. It seemed about a mile away. My friend was certainly happy about it. Got the idea that the light in the distance was the tow truck, lost in the field, just like us, and couldn't find his way because of the darkness. I thought it could be true, being as our car was off and there was no light coming from where we were. In fact, there was no real light anywhere. Not like the moon had anything better to do. Didn't change the fact that it still wasn't present. Then he made the executive decision that we should go towards the light to investigate. I had elected that we shouldn't do that because we didn't know where the light was. I was kind of worried about it, actually. Before I could voice an alternative, he had already started heading that direction. Being the wall of courage that I was, I decided to take the brave course of action and follow him. No sense being alone, and I didn't want him to run into any trouble. For what felt like 2 hours, we walked toward the light. It didn't feel like it had been that long, but in my defense, we had no way of telling the time. Now, maybe a good 100 or so feet away from the ring of light, I could make out a lantern on a post. I was immediately disheartened at the lack of a tow truck. My friend decided to look at the positive, claiming that it could mean that someone was around. He proposed that if we were nearer to the light, we would be easier to find. I was skeptical, but far be it from me to squelch his hopefulness. We approached the post and both noticed a sign, which read, "Due to increased reports of missing persons, citizens are advised to stay out of this valley after dark." We looked at each other. I voiced my complaint of our shared situation again. He was confident that we would be fine. He suggested if that we stayed in the light, we would be found. His statement was punctuated quite well by his arm being ripped off. I turned to his left to see what had ruined his pool game. Screams filled my ears as my friend held his shoulder. I moved to push him back in the direction of the car. At least there we could have some defense. As we moved out of the light, I turned back toward the lantern, and that's when I saw it. Whatever it was difficult to make out. It was as black as the void, like a hole in reality. It had a resemblance to a bat, but with the body of a lion, in shape at least, and as big as a bear. It stalked in the light of the lantern, and when it passed in front of it, all light was gone. I turned back and picked up my friend. We couldn't waste time, and I didn't know how fast that thing was. Blood from his wound splashed on my face, and I moved as fast as I could. In between my running and his sobbing, I could hear it move in the grass just behind us. I could just about make out the car in the haze of the dull darkness. I adjusted my hold on my friend, and then all at once felt his weight gone as the whatever it was stole him away into the grass. I caught a glimpse of his scared, pained face as he disappeared into the darkness. I turned away, tears in my eyes screaming fruitlessly into the silent fields as I sprinted to the car, trying not to listen or think. I reached the car and fumbled with the handle. A cold chill hit me, as I then realized we had locked the doors when we'd left for the light. Of course he had the keys on him. It was his car after all. I froze as I heard a deafening screech in the distance. It must have finished with my friend and was heading towards me. I ran around to the other side of the car to give me some distance. With seconds to spare, it appeared almost exactly where I was standing before. I tried to get a good look at it through the car. It had stopped and was moving, what I assume was its head looking for me. The center of its head sort of opened and a vortex of light started to appear. It looked like a deep hole, endless and glowing. Cold white light bathed the area and gave me a sense of overwhelming dread. It took strength to look away. I noticed the rear window was down about halfway. This was it, my way in. I felt around quietly looking for something to throw. I found a stone, tested the weight, and threw it as hard as I could past the creature. It made a loud clang as it hit something metal hidden in the grass. My plan worked, and as it turned for the source of the noise, I dove through the window. Not exactly quiet, but I was now in the car again. Quickly I closed the window and I looked back across the car and was staring straight into that cold, endless vortex of light. For what felt like an eternity, it stared at me, through me even. Fear filled my every cell. As pain racked my eyes, I permitted myself to blink, and when my eyes opened again, it was gone. I blinked a few more times for good measure, making sure it wasn't a fluke or a trick of the eye. Sleep did not come that night. Not that the thought even crossed my mind. I was too focused on the constant sound of rustling grass all around me, and the occasional breathing sound just on the edge of earshot. When the sun finally rose, only then did I even move. The truck did eventually show up. To this day, they never found a body or any trace that anything I described was ever out there. But I know what I saw, and occasionally on moonless nights, I look out at the stars and swear I can see a shape moving.